What's up, everybody? How you doing out there this early morning? Welcome. And my name is Lee Black, of course, and I'm the host of Real Talk for Real Men. But I wanted to talk to you really quickly about a movie review. So it's late. I had nothing better to do. But I wanted to give a quick review of the movie One Love, the biopic about Bob Marley. And I could have waited till tomorrow, of course, but I wanted to do it now while it's fresh on my mind, seeing that I just finished watching it and just kind of want to give my opinion for those of you that might want to see it. I went into this movie completely with no expectation. I had already been aware of the story of Bob Marley, and there's a fascinating biopic that had aired a few months back on HBO that I watched one night. Just kind of caught it late, and it was a fascinating story about Bob Marley, the iconic figure. He's probably the most well-known person from Jamaica, to be honest with you, and of course, his music. Some of us are familiar with, but this new generation, we don't. They don't listen to Bob Marley, so older cats like myself, we are aware who Bob Marley is. I don't think the younger generation knows who he is. So that's what made this movie so remarkable, in my opinion, is that it was timely in that it was about a figure that don't necessarily know that people were clamoring to know a whole lot about. So when I decided to watch it tonight, because I was bored, and I was like, well, let me see what this is really all about. I went into it with low expectations, just to be honest, and I came away very, very impressed. Now, what I really liked what the movie did is it really it veered away from the documentary elements of Bob Marley's story. If you want to know the whole full history about how he lived, how he died, and things like that, you do better looking that up. You can Google it. This was really an inspirational story about the making of his iconic album called Exodus. Exodus has remained one of the top selling albums of all time when it comes to reggae music. It continues to actually be the anthems of justice, freedom, and unity, not just for Jamaica, but for causes and different things around the world. And so this movie, I thought, did a fantastic job telling the story of how the album itself came to be. And it encapsulated a lot of the elements of Bob Marley's story. In a nutshell, he was an abandoned child from a white father who didn't want him. African Americans, we know quite a bit about that. And it really kind of depicted the disconnect that he carried with him throughout his life, um, being an abandoned child and kind of growing up and actually adopting the teachings of Marcus Garvey and Haile Selassie. And as a Rastafarian, he was a true believer. And this biopic really showcased how his beliefs in Rastafarianism truly played a major role in the creation of this album and what it stood for. At its core, the movie is really about, it's called One Love because it's about this iconic moment in history when he did a unity concert, because at the time that he was living, Jamaica was in turmoil. It was one of the most violent countries back in the mid 70s, and he was literally almost assassinated because of the conflict between the factions at that time. He left Jamaica and he went on somewhat of a pilgrimage of rediscovery, and basically it led him to create his masterpiece, which is the album called Exodus. And of course, we've come to know some of the iconic songs from Bob Marley, I Shot the Sheriff, One Love, War, and things like that. And what I really enjoyed about how this movie depicted those songs, it did not do it in the same way that we saw in movies like Ray or the biopic about James Brown called Get On Up, Get Down, whatever it's called. This really told more of a human element to the story in the songs. And it really showcased Bob Marley as a family man. It did not gloss over entirely his colorful history of being a womanizer, having illegitimate children, and it touched just slightly on the fact that he probably was a little bit violent, because it showed him as a real human being, flawed and all. Ultimately, if you don't know, Bob Marley actually died at the age of 36 from cancer. He had a great passion and a love for soccer. He did not want to get his toe amputated. It didn't go into great detail about that, so it just kind of lets you know that the cancer ultimately is what took his life. But it actually culminated in the end with him actually doing this unity concert, and he's credited with actually bringing his entire nation together. While it did not have the visual stunningness of a big budget movie like Ray, or again the James Brown movie, I thought where it exceeded those movies is it touched on the human element. It told a brilliant story of depicting him just as a human being and as a true believer. And the actor that played him, his name is Kingsley Ben Adair, and who played his wife was an actress called Lashana Lynch. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They did a brilliant job playing their roles as Bob Marley and as Rita Marley. I hope to see them in something else. I actually am in love with this movie. If you asking for my rankings on a scale of a 5.5 star scale, I give it 4 stars. I really do. I think they probably could have went a little bit more deeper in telling his story, but ultimately, I love the fact that the runtime was under 2 hours. It was a little bit over an hour, I think an hour and 31 minutes, which I thought was perfect because it's the perfect kind of movie where they didn't try to go too deep into the weeds of like of going back into his life. Now it was able to weave the tapestry of some imagery about Haile Selassie, and it left some mystical things there for you to actually interpret. But I didn't mind that part. The songs were brought to life in a very human way. And so I thought it was beautiful how they incorporated some of his biggest hits into how they came into creation, and they humanized them. And so for me, I give this a 4 star. And just in case you're wondering whether or not this movie has been successful, it is now the sixth highest grossing biopic music in history. It is one of the highest grossing movies of 2024. The only movie so far in this year in 2024 that's probably going to surpass it is Dune. But right now, it is speeding up the charts. It's continuing to make money. The only movies that are past it when it comes to music biopics are Bohemian Rhapsody, which was released in 2018. Elvis, of course, in 2022. Straight Outta Compton in 2015. Rocket Man 2019. And Walk the Line back in 2005. And, of course, Ray. Those are the only musical biopics that actually are ahead of this movie, which makes this highly impressive that they were able to take a historical figure that is not well known and certainly not this new generation is connected to, and to make a picture and weave the tapestry of it and it be this successful. So I myself give it a complete thumbs up. I definitely recommend watching this movie. It brought me to tears in a couple of places, not because it was so sad, but it was able to tell a humanizing story of how he lived. And I really felt the connection of how he actually was still struggling throughout his entire life of not having a father figure, being disconnected. Not to mention the fact that again he was a womanizer, and the relationship between him and his wife. It really told a story and touched on things that a lot of times we as men in general don't really like to speak about. And it really showed him in many ways as a poet. It was beautiful to watch. The music was actually fantastic. I thought they did a fantastic job in telling his story. So, with that said, I'm going to go back to minding my business, but I definitely recommend watching One Love. It's continuing to make money. I think it's now cemented itself in the history of music biopics. It is a fascinating story, definitely worth watching. So, I'm Lee Black, and I'll catch you on the other side.